when we talk about getting a garden started, we often think annuals because that's sort of the traditional lingo of the garden. But of course, perennials pay off incredibly well. So if someone doesn't have any in their garden right now, Angela, and spring's coming and they're like, you know what, I'm kind of interested, what would you recommend?
So I take a look at what you eat, what you purchase from the grocery store. Start growing what you eat. And we hear that a lot when it comes to annuals, but can you take that a step further and think about that in terms of perennials? So if you're buying apples or you're buying oranges or lemons every week at the grocery store, could you look at incorporating that into the garden? I think there's a lot of things that we don't realize are actually perennials, like rhubarb, artichokes, chives, some onion varieties. There's a perennial spinach, perennial lettuce varieties, and a lot of new flavors if you're not familiar with them. But then what ends up happening is you're getting these awesome harvests without all of the labor associated with planting and seed starting every year. So I think spring's a good time to think about that.
As a gardener, most people start with annuals and often quick growing annuals in their first few years. And I think, I mean, I can only speak for myself here, but as I've grown, I've gone, you know what, my annual garden, I still love it every single year. It's still a source of deep joy, but it tends to contract slightly. And I try to replace certain areas with these perennials. Like for me, my artichoke patch is one, my asparagus patch is another. Obviously, the orchard is another one. And it's just been fun to kind of go, you know what, maybe this bed will just always be for asparagus. And that's completely cool. So I don't know if that's kind of been your vibe as
Yeah,
well.
I did the exact same thing. I dedicated a bed in my garden proper that I have solely to asparagus. And I'll rotate things through there to kind of act as companions from season to season, but that's the primary location for my asparagus to reside. And so is it limiting? No, it actually is reason for me to get creative in what I can grow with that every single year.
Yeah, that's what I've found as well. Because frankly, when you look at a blank space, like I did 3 years ago when I moved into this place, I was like, where the hell am I supposed to start? It's very difficult. And I have a way that I did do it. I sort of started putting structures where they sort of had to be, like the things that had to go a certain place, help me inform the rest of the space. But yeah, it's kind of intimidating. So the constraint can help you design and plan better, right?
I know, isn't that funny how that happens? Yeah.
The world of fruit trees, going back to it though, obviously a perennial, and spring is an interesting time for a specific type of fruit tree being a bare root. And I don't know how much you prefer that versus planting, grown outs, but it seems like as good a time as any. In fact, maybe the only time to really get your bare roots in the ground is right about now.
Yeah. So again, this is going to be climate dependent. For me, I'm obviously in zone 7 in central New Jersey. So that's going to be different than where you are. But for me, the best time to plant a tree is either going to be late fall before the ground freezes, or it's going to be early spring after the thaw, because there's a lot of moisture that's really going to help that root system establish. And then also the tree has just a few weeks to focus on establishing itself and roots and, all that good stuff before it has to worry about leafing out and budding or anything. I have found the best luck, following planting guides is great, but generally speaking, you're not just going to dig a hole to the size of the piece that you purchased. You're going to go a little wider. You're going to loosen up that soil so that those new roots have an easier time getting established in their new home. And peach plums, if you're in the locale that can accommodate those things, those are good cherries. Those are all coming up on the spring planting list.
Mm-hmm. I actually totally agree with you in principle. If you're starting out with a small space and a small budget, bare roots are significantly cheaper as well in most cases. It's just the timing, at least here, I don't know if it's the same for you, but for here, there's bare root season. It's like now until maybe mid-February, everything's sold out after that and you're done. You got to wait till next year.
The weather out here is so volatile lately in the spring and summer. Sometimes we have no spring and we're just right into 100 degrees. And so for a plant that I just put in the ground, it's not going to have as much of a chance. If I have a slower spring, that's great. But I guess, like I said, it depends on your climate where you live.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think something I would have told myself back when I started at this property would have been to actually focus on the perennials first because of their payback time. Like my artichokes didn't produce in the first year, right? My asparagus still hasn't really meaningfully produced, and this will be the second season they're going. And so, but there's sort of an irony of like, you're way more attracted to annuals as a beginner, so that's what you focus on. And then once you get into the perennials, it actually would have been great to have gotten into that years ago, because that's when they'd be pumping out for you.
Watch the full episode right here and subscribe for more new episodes every single week.